Okay, so today I'm going to be kind of talking about how to get a workflow set up. So setting up the workflow, we're going to do it through RStudio so that we can actually create this HTML website in a relatively, hopefully straightforward and simple way so that we can keep that part of the research workflow together. So what this ends up looking like, for example, is I'm going to go pull up GitHub here in a second. Let me pull up what I've done with Dr. Greathouse so we can show what that looks like. Okay, so here is one of the workflows. This is for the esophageal cancer project that we've done. It's really, there's not that much to the workflow. There ends up being this analysis folder, a code folder, a docs folder, and an output, plus a few kind of technical files. So the analysis file or folder contains all of the R markdown scripts that'll be compiled into HTML web pages so we can navigate through and work on them. And I'll go through those in a little bit more detail. There's a code folder which basically has all of the essentially additional code that we use, but maybe we don't need to have it into an HTML file specifically. The docs folder is what we'll use to actually store the compiled HTML files so that GitHub can view them. Then there's an output folder. This is kind of like an additional folder that'll just store figures or data files or just additional output and information that we don't necessarily need in the website, but is useful to have when making manuscripts. And in the end, it ends up looking something like this, where we have the title of our project, we have just a very simple navigation of home, maybe information about the project. See, we haven't even added anything here. Maybe adding a license. We'll probably add an MIT license, and there's a really good resource for just figuring out what those are. The nice thing is you can just click any of these links and go to one of the pages so that we can kind of see what all was done. Now, how do we actually create this? It's actually pretty straightforward, which I appreciate about R and RStudio. So to do it, we're just going to go into RStudio. Let me open it up real quick. Okay, so now this is what my RStudio looks like when I open it up. You'll see that it probably doesn't open up a file initially. There's nothing in file environment, and it defaults to this code, this file folder for the directory. So what we need is a package called workflowr. So I'm going to actually go in and install it. Workflowr. And it should only be one. And you want to make sure to install any dependencies. It's really important. And it'll take a second. Now for me, since I've already had it installed previously, there's probably not going to be very many dependencies that it needs to install. But for you, whenever you initially run these files or run this part of the code, it'll probably be very slow. So if it takes a couple minutes, just let it do its thing and it'll eventually be done. So now in this package section over here, what we're going to do is scroll down all the way to workflow just to show you what is in that folder. So now there's other packages for workflows as well. But this provides this really simple help page. There's a little bit of documentation I can't remember actually what all is in here. There's some good resources for kind of understanding what additional resources and kind of information is available for this package to help you getting it set up on your specific desktop or laptop, so that it's easy to kind of get started with it. But here I'm going to go through kind of what I do to get started. When I first started using it, I just honestly went to the HTML file here and just started reading through how do you do this. It's very, very useful. And again, I'll be doing this in a pretty non-code heavy way to just show how I get started. But again, these resources are really great and useful for getting up and started. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go up to the project folder up here on the top right, and I'm going to say new project. And it's going to freak out on me for a second, but then we just get back to it. And you see that there's all these different types of projects we can create. What I want initially is we're going to just start a workflow project. You can also just create your own simple Markdown website if you would like to. But for here, we're going to do the workflow project. And right now, the project I'm going to make is test workflow project. The project name, just going to do the same thing. And you can, if you already have a directory that you want to create this type of folder, you can do that instead of creating a new subdirectory. And there's some nice things that it'll do to make your life easier, but for now, just getting the basics of how to get these things set up. And then we just press create project. RStudio will think for a second, and then it'll open it up. And so you'll see that it kind of changed where this file, this directory is looking. So now I'm in my GitHub folder that defaults to and has this workflow project in there. And again, it has all of those folders where it has analysis, code, docs, and output. You'll notice it has a few extra folders as well, specifically this data folder and this Git folder. Now, there's some Git ignores and other things as well, but initially the big thing I want to talk about is this data folder. So with a lot of the projects I've worked on with collaborators, we actually have restricted data that we don't want to just publish to GitHub. So what we'll do is we'll make this folder essentially not get published to GitHub by using this git ignore file. So how we do that is we essentially just go into here and we say these are all the types of files that we don't want to be basically uploaded to GitHub. So what I'll do is I'll add data star. So what this means is in the data folder, anything that is in there, we're just ignoring it. So that if there's a specific type of file, like say only the CSV files, we could ignore just those. Or in this case, I'm just ignoring all of them as just a blanket, making my life easier. And then we're going to save that. So now in this test workflow, what we're going to see is that this is just the README. So this is just what will show up on GitHub as like an explanation of what the project is. So we're going to ignore that. This is the kind of introduction to the website. So what we saw initially, this turns into this eventually, where we see all the different headings and potential links to project or pages. But what we want to do now is just, we're going to compile the whole project and just get the website up and running and view it locally. So to do that, I'm going down into the console, and under the workflowr package, we want to build it. And because I'm not doing anything, this is the first time I'm building it, there's not a specific file I want to build, I'll just build the whole thing at once. And there's only really 3 files, and I'll show y'all what those 3 files are here in 1 minute. You'll see that it's just home. Home is the title of the home screen. This is the only information that I added to there, so that's all that's put on the home page. It's very straightforward and simple. And so you have the index file, or the about file, the index, and then the license as well. And you can click that and go back to the home of the website. Now, whenever we just use the wflow_build with no additional inputs or arguments, it'll automatically build all of the files in the analysis folder. So this is really useful when you want to make sure it just builds everything and put everything up to date. However, when we get into larger build out the project more, we eventually want to just build a single file. So what that looks like is we go into building just a new R Markdown file. I'm going to say this is analysis results. And I was the author of it, and we're just going to build it. Nothing too fancy here. And we'll just then save it to our analysis folder and just do analysis. Yeah. And you'll see that it saved a new R Markdown file into the analysis folder. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to build just the single file. So here we're going to, one of the arguments is files, and I got that to show up by just pressing tab, and I want to just build a file in the analysis folder called analysis1.rmd. That's the only file I want to build. And you'll notice I have to put the folder path to it because it defaults to putting the kind of directory to the head of the or the root of the project, not the analysis folder itself. So we have to add that part of the path into it. And we're building this one file. And what it'll do is it will display the results of compiling that file itself. And so this is just the default Markdown script, and it's not very fancy or pretty or anything, but you can add more details and more information to it. And you'll notice one thing that is nice about the workflowr package is that it gives you a simple kind of table of contents that you can click on to move to different parts of the file. And it builds this based on the number of pound or number symbols you add, and that's the Markdown language. However, one thing that makes this difficult is there's no way to get to that page of results from the home page. And so to add that in, we're going to go to the index, which is the home file, and we want to build a script, a link to that page. And so we're going to go analysis results 1. I think I did it backwards, yeah. So it's brackets and then parentheses. It is analysis 1. Instead of it being RMD, it's HTML because it's an HTML file that we're going to view. So we're going to save that. And now, workflowr, we're just going to build the whole directory this time. And you'll see that it's only building the file that was last updated. and then that link is added. And we can go to the page, which is really simple and nice and easy. So the next major step of this is actually putting it on GitHub so that we can view it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up GitHub Pages. And under GitHub Pages, the last file I opened up, let me size this to make it easier because it's a little big. There we go. That's everything is viewable. So what we need to do is we need to get GitHub desktop to understand where this file is, or where this project that we care about is. So we're going to add a local repository, and it is under my GitHub. Where is it? Your documents, GitHub, test workflow. Okay, so now I added the directory that holds the project that I am trying to add to GitHub. So we're going to add it, and it'll show that everything is in here, and it'll show all the changes to all the files. And so now this is a brand new GitHub directory, so you'll notice that it says publish repository. And because it says publish, what I need to do, there hasn't currently been any repository on GitHub, so we need to add one. So we're just going to do initial commit. So it's going to be our first commit to GitHub. We're going to commit it to it, and then we're going to publish. And so that's I'm okay with not having this private, so that we can actually have the workflow usable as for GitHub Pages, so that we can make the website. If you have an organization part of it, you can add that to it as well. And that's one thing that's useful for labs and stuff, is to have a kind of lab organization under GitHub, so you can publish them to that. I'm going to publish it, and it thinks for a minute, and it's there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to view it on GitHub. Okay. So now this is my workflow in GitHub. And you'll see that now it actually does have the data folder, but there's nothing in it except for the README. Now the next big thing is we want to create this as an actual website. So to do that, we go over to settings, and you have to be the administrator for the GitHub repository. And in here, what we're going to do is, it should be over here on the left. You can give access to people, branches, pages. This is what I was looking for. So under pages, what we're trying to do is, it is designed so that we can have a project as a website. So currently there's no GitHub Pages activated for this repository, but I want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish it based on the master branch. So that means under the root of the project. And I don't want it to be just build the website based on the root, but just based on the documents folder, so that it doesn't try it, so it only knows to use the files in that folder to create the website. We're going to save that, and so it says that my site is ready to be published, which is nice. One thing that it does that's nice is it automatically forces a little bit of security layers, which is just a lot of complex things to deal with that we don't want to. And if you have like a custom domain, you can add that as well. It is, nope, error. It is not not ready to view apparently. Is ready to be published. Okay, why? It's in progress. Okay, so it is saying that it is deployed and it is supposed to be active. So let's see if it viewed it. Yep, it did. Oh, we have an exclamation point. What does this mean? It passed the first check. Don't know what that means. No, it means it has changes. So really, I just had to publish it again. So it's probably fine. And then you get a version history of when date, really the documents were made, which is nice. And so that is really the basics of how to get one of these workflow websites up and running. So we've covered really everything from installing the package in RStudio up through kind of initially getting it published in a GitHub account. Now there's a lot of more nuances to what you can do once you have this kind of workflow set up, but really the basics of it are really just going between RStudio and GitHub to publish it. And you can, the nice thing is that all of the pages are based on Markdown language, which is very straightforward to kind of get a basic understanding of the syntax, such as creating lists or creating formulas if you need to. And because all of the options are really under this one package, it creates everything in a nice compact form. It's not terribly complex, but it does take a little getting used to when you haven't used maybe RStudio very much, or getting used to GitHub. And there's a million resources for getting up and running on GitHub and RStudio, which is nice. And I really, and just feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm not in any way an expert in any of these tools, but I've used them for about 5 years now, so I have a base understanding of certain errors that you come across, which troubleshooting and going through Stack Overflow is really what I use a lot to troubleshoot my errors. So there's always some new thing that pops up, and this isn't the only package that's available for creating these types of workflow websites. I encourage you to, if you want to look into something new, do it, because there's people coming up with new ways of doing these things all the time. Maybe there's even more streamlined ways since this package was developed. I need to look into that, but this is a nice, simple introduction to how to create a website so that you can share your research results with collaborators more easily, and creates just a nice dichotomization, or a nice categorization of different types of results, so you don't have too long of results files trying to share them. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and let me know.